Our speaker. I'm so excited. It's Kasia. You pronounce it Kasia, right? Okay, good.
Kasia is easier than Katarzyna, like it shows in the corner there.
Yes, it's much easier than Katarzyna. Thank you. Although it's a beautiful name. It's just beautiful. So Kasia Roe joined Launchpad, and I think she only came to a few meetings, and then she got a job. And so we didn't get to know her as much as yes, it was exciting. We were so excited for her. And so I thought that that's what she was going to talk about, was how I landed my great job. And that might be part of this presentation, but her title is Communicating in the Age of COVID. And I'm going to tell you, and I love the way she starts it off. Getting laid off sucks. Thank you. Thank you for being clear.
Let's be real.
Yes, let's be real. So at any rate, I love this. Okay. So Kasia is the Director of Client Success for a company called Sauceda Industries. It is a local Austin 3PL, which is a third-party logistics company. And over the years, she has had a number of career pivots across companies of all types and sizes, ranging from large tech companies like Selectron, which is now Flextronics, to small freight forwarding startups and consumer product powerhouses like Yeti. In May 2020, she joined the ranks of millions of laid off workers. I think Yeti was her last job before she came to us. After observing how others handled sharing their COVID-related stories on LinkedIn, she crafted a unique approach to embracing the moment. That almost always works. When you're in a catastrophe, you're in crisis, if you can reframe it and make it be something that you can talk about in a positive way, it helps. So let's see. She crafted a unique approach to embracing the moment, controlling the message, and pivoting again to a new career path. Her approach worked, and as she shared her tips with others, they too were able to make meaningful changes to their job searches and even found surprising new career opportunities. She is passionate about mentorship and giving young and aspiring career professionals the tools to find their voice, speak their truth, and succeed in their careers, particularly women in male-dominated environments. She is a booster for the community-based mentorship program Rally, powered by the Mom Project, and is training to become a facilitator for Google's I Am Remarkable program. I don't think you need training for that. She lives in Austin with her husband, her 2 kids, 2 moms, and 2 dogs, and a cat. We already understand the complications of your life. Yes. Without any more delay, let me just help all of us give a nice welcome to Kasia Roe.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Kathy and Shannon are just such wonderful advocates for, these really stressful times that we find ourselves. And so, I'm so grateful for the work that they do week in and week out. And although, I was lucky that I didn't have to necessarily spend a long amount of time, searching, their presence was such a calming and inspiring presence for me to have, in those weeks that I was working to find a job. And so, that was, so thank you, ladies, for all that work that you do. You do it day in and day out, week after week, and it's not easy. And so I really commend you for doing that. So, as part of that introduction, yes, back in May, I did find myself laid off from Yeti after having spent a number of years there. And one of the things that I really wanted to sort of share here with the group is a lot of like what that emotional flow kind of looked like, moving from a space of being just stunned to find yourself at the receiving end of a phone call that you weren't prepared to get, and sort of walking through the steps of that job search. So if you bear with me, just one. I've spent my time in Austin working at a number of organizations, different sizes, different cultures, different industries, all sort of within the umbrella of supply chain. So really at this point, I consider myself a supply chain professional. One of my passion projects is mentorship, and particularly since in supply chain, coming up through the ranks, I found myself very often being, if not the only woman in the room, one of the very few. So learning how to navigate that space was also, a challenge. And I like to share some of those lessons learned with other people who are coming up through their ranks. And I find that very, very fulfilling work. So just so you guys know, there are quite a few slides here. I've got 27 slides, but only 2 really matter. So if you're gonna focus on it, just focus on 2. Here's a quick breakdown of what we're gonna be going through. And I hope that, you can take away some ideas from this, maybe some encouragement, and I certainly hope some inspiration as you navigate, this space yourselves. There is going to be an opportunity when we're going through the presentation for us to do a breakout room, because I think it would be beneficial to look and see if there is a way to craft your own message. If you feel like sharing that with the larger group afterwards, we can have time to do that. If not, that's perfectly fine. This is a very personal, obviously, experience, and so we'll honor however you want to handle that. So just briefly wanted to walk through, what just happened, that moment, right? When you either get a phone call from your boss. For me, I was a little surprised because when I got the call from my boss, I didn't think anything of it. He and I talked frequently throughout the day. And so it wasn't a big deal that he was calling me. And even when he started talking and I noticed that there was just something about his voice that was different, and then he mentioned about how he had an HR person with him, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to lay off one of my team. And that was where my headspace was in. And so when he said the words that, you are now being, let go, I certainly was not prepared for that. I mean, the kick to the stomach feeling, that drop that you experience, all of that, was very much unexpected, not exactly welcome, and sort of obviously threw me for a loop. While I applaud people who can react very quickly and be proactive about asking questions and wanting to know what was the decision that sort of put them over the edge, and all of this, I was pretty much stun mode. And so I just sort of, when they asked if I had any questions, I said no, not really. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, what did any of my questions ultimately matter? Whatever algorithm or process was used to determine who in the company was going to be laid off, I made that list. And so my mind immediately went to what's next. So don't know if that was a similar situation for anyone else, but if it was, then, I know how that felt. And, it's a terrible experience to have to go through. I very quickly, though, had to get out of the headspace of thinking that I got laid off because I sucked at something. And I needed to hear that. And thankfully, I have a nice enough support network from my husband and my friends and things like that. And they made it very clear. And I just want everybody here to also just know this, that getting laid off does not mean that it has anything to do with your skills, your abilities. Oftentimes it is an algorithm that is done at a completely different level. And so please don't take that to heart. And it's easy to do, and it's easy to start thinking negatively, but wallow in it for a little bit and then try to move past that, because the reality of it is just because you're laid off doesn't mean that you're lacking. You may find yourself thinking, what do I do now? Which, if I'm honest, I don't even think the lady from HR was done sort of explaining like what the process was going to be. Like, my mind was already thinking like, I got to get on LinkedIn. I'm going to have to go on Indeed and like figure out whatever I'm going to be doing. I was already rewriting my resume at this point while she's still talking. I recognize now that that was not me being super proactive. That was me being in full panic mode. And, you know, that's fine, but that wasn't very productive work in that moment. I needed to give myself time to grieve about the fact that a job that I loved was no longer going to be there for me. It was okay to get a little mad about like, why me and why not some of the other folks or some other departments or whatever the case may be. And it certainly is okay to feel confused, because even though we were in that pandemic space, and I kind of abstractly thought like that may happen, I certainly didn't think it would actually come to fruition. And so all of these feelings are completely normal and a normal process of overall grieving for what you find yourself in. As the days went on, I realized that in my specific case, there was quite a number of people who were part of the group that were let go at all levels, all departments, all varying years of tenure, that kind of thing. So it made it a little bit easier for me to really kind of come to terms with the fact that it wasn't so much about me specifically, and it was more of a general approach that the company had to take to protect itself. So, but I had to get through those steps. And again, I was fortunate enough, my husband quite quickly realized what was happening. And he basically said, don't worry about the kids. You do whatever you need to do to just like process and give yourself a day, a week, whatever, to just get through this so that we can, you know, move on. And I really appreciated that. One of the very first things, one of the best things that I got was an email from a lady who put me in touch with Launchpad. She had been an alum of the club, and she had sent me a wonderful email that ended up making the rounds to a lot of us, talking about steps to take. And when you're feeling out of control, having a checklist of things to do was super, super helpful. And one of the very first things that Kathy shared with us was all of her checklists and all of the opportunities that we have to start working on ourselves, which is so important when we're looking at redefining what we want out of our career search. And so I spent a good 2 weeks, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., joining any and all webinars and workshops and downloading ebooks and like all manner of things about areas that I wanted to improve about myself. And what's interesting is that over the years, I'd had opportunities to do similar things, and I always deprioritized them. I always allowed other things to take precedence. But it's so important for us to give ourselves the time to empower ourselves, whether it means brushing up on skills, whether it means learning new things, or just working on our own sort of emotional health. All of that is super important, and it is not wasted time. The thing that stood out for me that Kathy had mentioned was looking for a job is a full-time job. And I took that to heart, and I wanted to make myself as well-rounded in this job search as possible. So I encourage you all to take that time and also look around and see what resources are out there that will allow you to brush up on those skills, learn something new, decompress, so that you are in a good headspace when you're going out looking for and applying for jobs. Okay, so we have now reached what I think is the most important slide of the presentation. And for me, this is what ultimately was the light bulb moment that allowed me to really start making some tremendous gains in my own job search. If anybody remembers those RCA commercials where the guy's sitting in the chair and then like the wall of sound comes and it kind of blows his hair back, like this isn't the level, I think, because this is a very simple sort of statement, right? But it is so powerful. And the how we communicate is as important as the words that we're using and the information that we're seeking. And so I wanted to share with you guys an example of, these are snapshots that I took off of LinkedIn. And most of these are representative of most of the posts that I saw. And as you read through these, so take a moment actually to read through these. And there are a few things that stood out for me about these messages that I found a little daunting when I was contemplating my own message that I was going to put on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to be quiet here for 2 minutes while to give you guys a chance to read through these, and then we can talk through them for just a quick second. Okay, so the thing that stood out for me in a lot of these messages was that in a lot of ways, they felt very vague or passive. They took an approach that rightly talked about how much of a surprise COVID has been for so many of us, right? They were basically in a lot of ways, a shout for help, please help me find a new job, a new connection, whatever the case may be. And I saw so many of these same types of messages. I was worried that if I put my own message out there that was like this, that I would be lost in the sea of everyone else. If I remember correctly, the week I got laid off, the unemployment rate had hit something like 16 million, right? And a lot of people were posting LinkedIn messages that were very much like this. What ended up happening is I was listening in on a webinar of, and I don't even remember what the topic was, but I got some advice on there that I think just fundamentally shifted my approach. And so I used that as the outline to help me craft my own message. Because what you say does matter as well. So this is my second most important slide. It's how you say it and what you say. And it's 4 simple things ultimately that I've realized. you want to state the obvious, right? You're laid off because of COVID. This isn't a performance related issue. This is a pandemic. It's global. At the same time, we all know that we're in the middle of COVID right now, so there's no need to go on and on and on about it. Just state it very briefly. Express gratitude for the fact that, you know, you had a job or you worked with a bunch of really cool people. I have yet to discover a negative outcome of ever expressing gratitude at any point. So put it in there. To a bunch of strangers who may be looking through LinkedIn, seeing somebody expressing gratitude is going to help them very quickly start building up a profile of the type of person you are. So it can only help. You have to showcase your value proposition. You're going to be posting on a platform that spans the globe, and it spans industries and different careers types and job descriptions. You need to be able to show why you are valuable, why out of all of the people that are posting and looking and asking for help, why should somebody focus on you? And an analogy that kind of came to mind was that, you know, if you're standing on a beach and you're looking out into the ocean, right? You know, intellectually, that beneath the waves, there's like a ton of fish, right? Swimming around. You know they're out there because there's fishermen like standing next to you and they're like, you know, throwing their lures into the water. And every now and again, somebody will, you know, some fish gets caught. But you don't see it because there's so much, and two, there's nothing that's really, you know, standing out. And every once in a while, you'll see this like fish like pop out of the water. You need to think about your post in a similar manner. LinkedIn is a sea, and you want to be able to do something that basically pops you out of that water so that people can focus in and zoom in on you. And at the end, you also want to state the specific intent. If we look back at some of these other posts, you'll notice that in some cases, they don't even really offer like the information you would need in order to help somebody. Like I would have to click into their profile to even see, and then scroll down and like check what their jobs look like. And, you know, that's assuming their profile is even up to date. You got to make it easy for people to know in the span of your message who you are, the type of person you are, what you're looking for. And not only that, but also why you're going to kick ass at what you're doing. And so all of these things are, I think, the secret ingredients to a really good post. And so the way I knew that it worked is because after crafting a message that followed those guidelines, within 2 days, we had over 10,000 views. People from all over the world started sharing the posts. Like, they didn't know who I was. Certainly we didn't work in the same industries, but for whatever reason, they felt called to say, hey guys, I'm going to share this. And to my peeps in the US, please take a look. And it was just such a immediate response that proved that proved to open so many opportunities for conversations with people. So I went ahead and posted it. I don't know how easy it is to see on the screen. So if anybody has any trouble, let me know. We can read through it. But it hit all of these 4 points. And it allowed anyone who was looking at it to very quickly identify who I was, what I kind of stood for, what I was willing to do. It took a very active, in some cases like bold, I think, step of saying, I am not going to allow this situation to define me. Like, sure, I got laid off, but you know what? That just means my skills are ready to be, you know, put to use with somebody else. So come at me, show me what you got. let's find a good fit so that I can keep doing the things that make me such a valuable asset to a team. And each one of us has a value proposition. We're experts in our fields. None of us, from the few faces that I saw, right? Like, this isn't our first rodeo. We're good at what we do. We need to be able to clearly define that and sell that so that people can recognize very quickly that we're worth reaching out to and talking to. So here's where we're going to try an exercise that I hope you guys are up for. We're going to actually try to see if you can recraft or craft your own message. And so with the help of Shannon and her incredible team, we're going to try to do a breakout room. It's going to be 10 minutes. If you want to jot down or screenshot these 4 ingredients to an effective post, please do so. And, Shannon, at any point that you want to go ahead and do the rooms, we can do that, and we'll set a 10-minute timer. How did you guys find that exercise?
That was good. I liked it.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
it was very good.
Great. Okay. Happy to hear that. We're all in these different stages, right? One of the gentlemen mentioned that he was really happy he got laid off. One was saying not so much. This is an opportunity, right? As much as it is a moment of crisis. And so I encourage everybody to put their best foot forward. I'll share this highly unscientific survey that I took over the summer of just some of my coworkers who were caught up in the same layoff. We had all formed a Facebook group to support each other. Again, we were from all areas of the company, different departments, different tenure, all of that. So the reason I felt so strongly about the way this messaging worked was because I could see how it could impact people irrespective of their own unique backgrounds. And I noticed that in so many cases, those people who continued to maybe not have as much success with finding even, opportunities for interviews and things like that, so much of it had to do with the attitude that they brought into these conversations. And so I think it's so important for us to have grace for ourselves to grieve and go through these stages of mourning that we have for maybe what was lost. If that's how you're feeling, there needs to be an opportunity to work through those emotions, but there also needs to sort of be a stopping point where you kind of say, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to actually shift my focus now, shift my attitude. And as we were joking in the other breakout room, fake it till you make it sometimes. I certainly wasn't feeling uber confident when I was posting that, but I thought, what the hell, right? What's the worst that can happen? And so Shannon was kind enough to include a link to these 4 steps. So please feel free to download that and keep that with you as sort of a reminder as you move through your searches about just trying to stay true to that message. That message is really going to, I think, help in a lot of different ways. And if nothing else, it will also help you feel empowered and good about all the value that you already bring to, to the work that you've done. The past is the past, but you are clearly, a valued employee and you will be again. So this is a bump in the road, nothing more. So in my search and in my message, that original message, at the time that I posted it, I was very much looking for a job in logistics, transportation, trade compliance, because that is what my roles have traditionally been, most recently in my career. But a funny thing happened as I started looking at job postings and what was available here in Austin for me. I'm not in a position where I could move, and so I had to find work here in town. And I found myself bored and dreading some of the posts that I saw for the jobs that were coming up. And I realized that I think I had sort of maybe gotten to the end of whatever I could offer these transportation roles, like these very sort of like niche areas. And I was looking for something else, something that was nothing about these roles that I saw coming down the pipeline was exciting to me. And so that led me on a different path, and a lot of self-improvement, searching in terms of what makes me passionate? What do I love to do? When are the moments at each of these roles that I've had over the years? What were those elements that were the ones that got me out of bed in the mornings, and got me through long work days and some pretty stressful times and whatnot. And I started peeling away at what I find is my value proposition. And so once I started peeling away and peeling away and peeling away, I realized I wasn't really actually looking to work in the same role that I had been. I saw this as an opportunity to maybe take a path that was a little bit different. The results of those, of my post meant that I was approached by people from across various industries to do things that were completely out of my comfort zone. And at first I was like, did you not read who, like what my jobs were? And it took me a while to actually realize they weren't necessarily looking for somebody who could move freight from point A to point B. They were looking for somebody who could explain in plain English what it means to move things from point A to point B when point A is Russia and point B is Vancouver, and all the complexities that might go in between that. And where I ultimately landed, and in fact, the job that I have right now is not anything related to what I used to do. But because I went through those exercises of peeling back and really understanding who I am as a valued asset in a company, I realized I'm a builder. And that helped direct my searches and conversations into an area and an avenue that I hadn't initially even considered. You may be different. You may find that your best moments happen, in its own space, and that's okay. And I guess that's where I'm trying to get across is take the time to look at what you can provide to the larger world in terms of like your energy and your values, right? I realized quickly that I wanted to do something different, but the steps to get to that place were the exact same. Whenever you're looking at a career pivot, you can talk to the differences, the gaps, the things that don't necessarily align 100% in your resume, as long as you have that thread that goes through it where your value proposition is similar, or the results that you were able to bring to the table were similar. It doesn't ultimately necessarily have to matter what your background is. You can market yourself in a way that shares that into a new direction. So cover letters, personally hate them. Not really great at it either, particularly since so many of them go through these, systems that you have to hit all the buzzwords and whatnot. you know, the magic there for me is keeping true to those 4 points of making sure that whoever's reading that cover letter understands who I am fundamentally as a person, and what the values I'm going to bring to that company are. This feels a little weird to be putting onto a presentation, but I wanted to just show it because I was really afraid to send this cover letter. This guy is now my boss. But the reason I wanted to share that with you guys is because I think there are a couple of elements here that, again, got him excited to talk to me. And because our values aligned across a number of areas, we ended up realizing that we would be a really good fit working together. I wanted to share the areas that I am passionate about, that I get really hung up on if I don't see happening. I wanted to be honest about the fact that, you know, like everybody else, I've had failures. I wanted to showcase that I use failures as the lessons that they are, because I think that's important to call out. Gratitude is really big with me, so I want to make sure that I'm always talking about the fact that I am grateful for, you know, everything that happens to me, even the bad stuff, because it's all lessons. And then there was my value proposition, and I had no idea what work he was going to have for me. I ended up getting referred to him by somebody who was an ex-customer of mine, who was one of my hardest customers ever to work with. And I legitimately thought at one point that they thought I was terrible at what I do, but come to find out that they had actually felt differently. And anyway, they were able to champion me. And so we connected because of this. And the cover letter was an opportunity for me to be very, very honest about what I was going to bring to the table. And it wasn't about my specific skills. There's nothing in here that talks about like my ability to move 3,000 kilos of blah, blah, blah from, again, point A to point B. You can teach that to anybody. The thing you're selling in these cover letters is who you are on the like soft side, as much as you are like, they can look at your resume, they can look at your LinkedIn profile, they can look at the companies that you've been at to understand some of your hard skills. And there's plenty of areas where you can list all of that out. But that cover letter is that beginning of that conversation where you're basically saying, this is who I am, right? And I'm not an Excel person, right? And I'm not like, you know, SAP or whatever. I'm somebody who comes in, takes a look, and if something doesn't exist, I will build it. So I encourage you to go through, there's a lot of resources out there around writing effective cover letters. I wrote and rewrote this a lot, and finally decided to hit send once I realized that I was staring at it for the 5th hour and just needed to get over myself. So yeah. That said, those were my rules. But just as, you know, knowing the rules, if you know the rules, you know how to break them effectively. I came across this just the other week. Somebody wrote a cover letter that was a drawing. It just happened to be somebody who was at Yeti or who wanted to be at Yeti. I think maybe that's why it popped up in my LinkedIn feed, but you know, if you actually look at it, it still hits all of those 4 points. It just does it in a unique way. I don't know if any of, you know, how many of us here are graphic artists who can, you know, do a layout like this, but just know that, you know, as much as we want to sort of follow certain rules, we're living in a very dynamic world, and you don't have to do things the way everybody has always told you to do them to still have an effective message. I just thought that was interesting to see.
I once wrote a cover letter on a sheet of copper.
I'm sorry?
I once wrote a cover letter on a sheet of copper because I was wanting to work in a machine shop.
Cool. That's brilliant. That's
I got
awesome.
the job.
Nice.
Right? That's fantastic.
Kasia, do you want questions at the end or do you want questions now?
You know, I thought at first, I was like, let's do them at the end, but I hate hearing me being the only person talking, so let's have them as they come up.
There are two questions in the chat box.
Okay.
So one of them says, when you looked at your value proposition, how did you realize that you were a builder? Was there an article or a career assessment that translated your value proposition to a builder? And what are some characteristics of a builder?
So that's a fantastic question. And like so many things, I found out not so much about what I wanted to do, but what I didn't want to do anymore. And so I've been a cog in a wheel at a large corporation, and I really found myself not responding well to job descriptions that fit my technical skills perfectly. And yet I had this gut feeling of like, I am going to be bored out of my skull within like 3 weeks and I'm going to hate this. Like, who wants to feel that before you even get to a job, right? And when I talk about peeling away that onion, it's about finding the things that you don't want as much as it is maybe having a light bulb moment where you realize, oh, this is something I do want. And so I looked back at those instances where I felt the most engaged and excited. The times that, you know, if it was a question of like a project that we were working on and it required, you know, a ton of hours and stuff like that. But again, I was so happy to be doing it. Like, what was it about that experience? And what that helped me identify is that in those environments where I was building, like creating a team, working for a startup, not having, like, I had to define the rules as opposed to just executing the rules. I'm in that bandwidth of a company's development where everybody's wearing 18 hats. Like, I'm the director of client, whatever, success right now, but I've had to clean toilets because we needed a clean toilet. We've swept the warehouse. Like, I'll wear whatever hat needs to be worn at the company because that's what the business needs. Once the company gets to a place where it's just like you're in here, that just doesn't feel like the space that I excel in. That said, everybody is different. Everybody has those areas where I think they just feel engaged. And if you can take the time and ask yourself those questions, write down. I mean, this is an exercise that I did with a colleague of mine, where we just wrote down all of the successes that we had, and it had nothing to do with a job title. Just like, tell me the times that you were like on fire over something. And you do a stream of consciousness sort of like exercise where you're just writing about that. You'll notice that once you start tying those back to areas or jobs or teams that you worked on, you start finding those patterns of like, that's really where I excelled. And so that's what worked for me.
Okay, and then another one, I think you kind of answered it, but I'll read it just because it's on here. This person said, I thought it was great input. I thought cover letters were supposed to highlight your hard skills in order to be selected. But anyway, when I read your cover letter, it was very interesting because you described the evolution of your startup experience. But at any rate, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that again.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am not an expert in any of this. I'm not an HR expert, but I I don't know, Kathy, I don't know if it was you or Shannon I was talking to the other week, and we had talked about how there was an alum who had also done a talk, and he talked about how much he hated like the ATS systems or like the resume writers or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like 100% with him on that. I found, so maybe my hope for the folks here is that if they take this approach, my hope is that what happens is that the connections you have on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever other social networking platform you want to use, is that you find people who will champion you. Because just like it was, we touched on this very early on in the meeting today around you want people to be like, hey, I need you to talk to this person because they're hiring, and I'm going to stand there and I'm going to say that you guys need, so-and-so. That circumvents all of the software, all of these tools that are supposed to help, but ultimately strip away in a lot of ways our individuality and force fit us into these spaces that don't feel very authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're necessary, and I know that, that they serve a function, but God, sometimes they're just terrible to experience. And they honestly, in some cases for me, they made me feel worse about my situation than anything else. Right. And so I really sincerely hope that if you can craft a message that showcases your passion and your power in a way that people will take up that mantle and help you carry it and put you in front of like the people, they'll come in and say, again, I'm very lucky. I don't even know how I got connected to my boss right now, but like I sent him that message. We talked, and he's like, I don't even have a job for you. I just know I need you on my team. And, that's great. But I really believe that if people can make those types of connections, COVID has, blown up our economy, and not all of that is in a negative way. Our ability now to work remotely, to function in ways that we were never expected to, has opened up opportunities in ways that we've never, I think we would have been 20 years down the path, right? You don't have to be tied to your regional area anymore. And I think companies are starting to look at that and say, the pool of talent that's out there is huge. So now as they're starting to inch back, right? I mean, I'm looking at the unemployment numbers, things are starting to edge down again. There's an opportunity for you to find a place that you're going to be valued, that you're going to be able to feel, obviously appreciated and challenged and motivated. It doesn't have to be in the place you thought it was going to be. You have to be open to that. You have to be maybe it's scary. I'm doing something that I've never done before. It's an area that I'm having to teach myself on stuff, but I am engaged every single day in a way that I just, I don't think I would have been otherwise. So I don't know. It was a very long answer to a question that I don't know if I actually even answered it, but that's kind of my take on it.
Did you, that is a wonderful letter. I love it. I love every piece of it. It looks as though it was crafted uniquely for Sauceda, that it was, did you do a variation of that letter for any other companies, or
I did. Yeah. So one of the best, there's a slide further on that talks about some of the resources that I went to. LinkedIn Learning, you've mentioned this, Kathy, a number of times, right? LinkedIn Learning has some really fantastic courses. One of the ones that I took that I have to say just absolutely, again, was like a game changer for me was how to think about your resume. Your resume is a marketing tool more than anything else. And so when you're marketing, you're trying to get very specific messaging to people. And so you want to have multiple versions of your resume. Same thing with a cover letter. But I'll say that I've submitted, so I use JobScan. I think it was a great tool. It had really helped me score up my resume in ways that I would not have been able to do. So I highly recommend it, as a tool. And I also used it to help me craft some of my cover letters. What's interesting is though that even with that, I found it hard to get through some of the ATS, even for roles that I was like eminently qualified for. Like I was hitting 97% of everything they were looking for. And there was just no callbacks, right? There wasn't even any acknowledgement that I'd been accepted. Crafting a letter to someone who you have either spoken to or already communicated a little bit with, I think is a little bit more effective, because you've already started to understand how they think, how they communicate, what's valuable to them to know about you. So JB and I had talked, I think, very, very briefly before I sent him my resume, because there was a connection that was made where, somebody had reached out and said, JB, you should look at Kasia's, LinkedIn. She's looking for work. He did. And he's, and so we chatted, and then I said, okay, fine, I'll send you my resume. And at the time, again, I wasn't really entirely sure what he was looking for. And so that's why I kind of said, like, I'm just going to put it out there. Like, this is what I'm good at. This is maybe not some stuff that I'm not good at, but like, I'm passionate about like these things. And it just happened to really align with what he was looking for.
That's great. Okay, I'm sorry. Why don't you go on with your, that's all the questions. So let's see the rest of your presentation.
Okay, super fast, just so y'all don't think that I'm like the only person who like had success with this. A friend of mine who is a phenomenally talented person who has unbelievable skills and work experience was struggling as well. So we crafted her message in very much a similar format, and she had an even better response than I did. So this is where I really felt like the rubber met the road, to show how valuable getting those 4 steps in can be. I'm so happy with the path that she's been on since she started looking for work. She's been able to not only get a tremendous amount of responses to her post, she's even had opportunities to completely rethink where her value proposition is. And when we started looking at like peeling back her layers of like, what makes you excited? What do you love? What do you hate? She's starting her own consulting business because she realized that I have all of this very broad experience across all these various industries and areas. She loves building teams, but she doesn't necessarily want to be there forever. So we talked through some of that around like, how can we make this work for you? And I happen to, so she has a mentor as well that worked with her. And so we were all able to kind of like separately come to the same conclusion that like, hey, you would make a fantastic consultant. And she's been running with it ever since. So, this was just the proof in the pudding example where I was very happy that she had such a wonderful response. And then resources. So we're coming up to the end, just 2 more slides. Obviously, job seekers, right, we're here. Like, there's a ton of resources that Kathy has, the team has. Use it. It's going to help you level up in ways that you may not even realize. There's a friend of mine had also had a couple other suggestions, so I just put those on, on there. On the right-hand side are the things that very specifically helped me. Gentlemen, these are going to be a little bit lady-focused, so apologies there, but know that there are groups that are both industry-specific, career-specific, that are out there and whose mission it is to help people develop. So for me, the Riveter was, I think through them, I saw the webinar that talked about taking a more proactive approach to messaging. I've listened to a lot of TED Talks about finding your purpose, finding your message. What do you want your epitaph to look like, and living your truth. So I've done a ton of that. The Mom Project is just, they're doing similar work for moms and mom supporters. So it's not exclusively women. And I've actually started volunteering with them as well. And then of course the LinkedIn Learning, which is where I saw the resume makeover. And that was the specific course that I took that helped me start. And because I did this even before I had gotten laid off, it got me into thinking about like, what is the purpose of what Zoom meeting is complete without a child or a dog? Pardon me, Maya, sweetheart. I'm still on the, okay, go get your Band-Aid. So again, and obviously your friends, your families, your colleagues, right? We're all in this together. If you feel like you don't have resources, you know what? Now you do. You've got this group here. We've shared our LinkedIn contact information. If anybody has any questions or wants to run some of these ideas, any ideas you have around crafting your message or your resume or your cover letter, reach out. We're in unprecedented times, and I want us to all be here for each other to support our paths.
What is the Mom Project?
The Mom Project is, so I came across them on LinkedIn. They're also a job search tool, so they post available openings, but they're very much focused on the work-life balance that working families need. So the companies that they partner with tend to have very progressive work environments that allow a ton of flexibility, particularly for women who, have kids at home or may be coming back into the workforce after having taken time off.